And we're back, and we're going to start looking at subtotals, right? So in the next tab, we're going to talk about subtotaling, and it's the same thing, right? It's calculations based on criteria, and instead it's really just a kind of a different way of viewing it in our data set rather than making some kind of external set like you see over here. Well, what have we done here? Well, we've summarized this data, right? We've summarized this data in the same way that we did in the last two examples using SUMIFs, all right? So here I used a SUMIF to figure out the total of profit based on the region, all right? So that calculation based on that criteria. Now, over here, I've done it in what's called a pivot table, and that's what we're going to start looking at in these next three examples after the subtotals, and then we'll look at for the rest of the week, right? So using a pivot table, I did the same thing, did these calculations, summing of the profit based upon this criteria, the region where we found it. Right? We can do the same thing right inside of our actual data set, all right? We've got 115 records here, and we can do this calculation based on criteria right in our data set using the subtotal button right here, using the subtotal button. There are a couple of things that we need to do before we try and use subtotal. One is that we need a proper data set, which we have here, right? We could easily turn this into an Excel table or do anything else we wanted to. We've got a proper data set. It is surrounded by empty cells. It has descriptive field headers at the top, individual records or transactions in the rows, and all the cells are filled in, right? We have a proper data set so we can rock and roll with this thing. Okay. The next thing that we have to do is we have to sort our data set prior to subtotaling. When you do a subtotal, if you get complete garbage back, it's probably because you forgot to sort your data set first, right? And we're going to sort our data set by whatever the criteria is that we're going to do the calculation based on. In this case, it's region, right? We're interested in our criteria as region. So that means we need to sort by region, right? And so to do that, I'm just going to come into here to our proper data set. Right here at the top, I'm going to come up here to the filter buttons, the data tab filter button. The filter buttons appear, and I'm going to say, hey, let's sort this A to Z, all right? By region, A to Z. And if we look down there now, we'll see that East changes to Midwest, then to South, then to West. It is alphabetically sorted by region, which means I can now subtotal by region. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and come up here. I'm going to go to subtotal and click on subtotal, and this nifty little box opens up right here. And it asks me, hey, at each change in what? And it gives me my list of all of my column headers, right, all of my field names. It gives me my list. At each change in what, in what criteria do you want the calculation to occur on, right? And so here we're interested in region, right? That's what we sorted, region. So we're going to select that. We're going to say, hey, perform the calculation based upon this criteria, region. Now, what type of calculation do you want? Is this a sum, a count, an average, just like we looked at with SUMIFs, COUNTIFs, AVERAGEIFs? We can go ahead and figure out what the calculation is that we want done. I want it to sum it, right? And so now, just like we chose the sum range before, it says, what is it that you want to be summing up? Well, I don't want sales, I want profit, right? I want profit. And I'm going to say, okay. And hey, look at this. When I scroll down here, now when the criteria changes, when East changes to Midwest, I get, well, railroad tracks is not big enough. I get a total 12,877 in the East. Let's go and look at this. Oh, look at that. In the East, 12,878, just to round it up. In the East, 12,878. Let's come down again. Look at this, right? Midwest, 8,442. And same here, right? Okay, so we're getting that right in there. That's beautiful. Right? There's a couple other things to notice about subtotals. When we do a subtotal, we get this outline view over here. Check this out. 1, 2, and 3. What is that talking about? Well, these are expand and collapse buttons. I can collapse the Midwest total here. Boom, just like that. And Midwest collapses down to just the total. I can go ahead and collapse all of the East right there, so we just get East and everything else is expanded. Or I can go to my outline buttons up here and I can say, hey, give me the largest view or the least view of the one, right, with just the grand total. Give me the the summary view there where I just get my subtotals, just my subtotals and my grand total, or I can go to the macro view on 3 and show me everything. Right? There is one interesting thing to note here, and that is that this kind of display, this is what we use for on-the-fly calculations, right? On-the-fly calculations for doing data analysis. This is more of the kind of thing of if we wanted to do like a presentation, right? If we wanted to present our data to the board or to our boss or something, we might do something like this, because this is the way people are used to seeing data, right? They're used to seeing, especially older folks are used to seeing data like this, and with some subtotals summarized like this, maybe you'd collapse this out and you'd say, hey, we just really want to focus in on the South and the West. And so this is the kind of thing that people are used to seeing. And so we might do something like this and then want to copy this to another page for printing or something like that. So I might make a new page here and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and copy this over to that page. And so I'd select this stuff and go Control-C and then come over to this next page and take it right up here and go Control-V. And whoa, hey, look at this. What's going on with that? I wanted to get just this, and instead I got this because, as we learned last week when we talked about filtering, right, this is a filtered list. You can see 41 jumps to 66 jumps to 94, 119. It's a filtered list, so this is just hidden from view, right? It's just hidden from view. All of this stuff is actually still here. So if we actually want to copy just this right here, we need to do something special. We need to go up and go to Home tab, Find and Select button, go down to Go to Special, and we can say, hey, I'm only interested in the visible cells, the things I can see. I'll click that, click OK. Now when I hit Control-C, you see it goes and it's just selecting the visible cells, the dancing ants, the green lines are around just the stuff that I'm seeing. Now if I take that and I go to a new sheet and I come here and I copy that, I get just those things that I wanted. All right, so that's a little trick that you find yourself wanting to do when you're doing subtotals, because oftentimes we want to copy this over for printing. Okay, so in the next one we'll look at doing subtotals based on multiple criteria.